Peter Samson hadn't always been invisible. Long before the streets became his home, he was a boy from the south side of Chicago, the middle of 3 kids in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. His mother worked double shifts at a nursing home. His father, when he was around, drove trucks cross-country. Peter grew up fast. He was the kind of kid who walked his younger sister to school, fixed the leaky kitchen faucet without being asked, and kept his head down when tempers flared at home. College wasn't an option, not with bills piling up and no savings to speak of. The Army, on the other hand, offered a steady paycheck, a sense of purpose, and something Peter had never had before. He enlisted at 20, the first time Peter put on the uniform. He stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized himself. The posture, the clean-cut hair, the boots, it was the look of someone who mattered. Basic training was brutal, but Peter thrived. Discipline suited him. He liked knowing his effort meant something. He was eventually assigned to the 101st Airborne Division. He learned to jump from planes, navigate hostile terrain, and make decisions when seconds mattered. His unit became his family, men and women from every corner of America, bound together by the unspoken promise to bring each other home. Kandahar, 2009, the mission that changed everything. The day of the ambush was hot enough to make the air shimmer. Peter's squad had been moving through a narrow valley when the first shots rang out. Contact left. Someone shouted. 2 soldiers went down. Carter, the young rookie, and Lieutenant Harris, the quiet man with a baby girl waiting at home. Peter's training kicked in. He dropped to the ground, returning fire, then crawled to Harris. The lieutenant was bleeding heavily. "You're going to be all right," Peter said, even though he knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. He hoisted Harris over his shoulder, sprinting for cover as rounds cracked past him. The weight was crushing, but adrenaline drove him forward. He laid Harris behind a wall, then went back for Carter. The rookie's face was pale, his breathing shallow. Peter lifted him, ignoring the searing pain in his own leg as shrapnel tore through muscle. By the time they reached safety, Peter could barely stand. But both men were alive for now. Harris wouldn't make it through the night. Carter would. The Bronze Star came months later. Peter never wore it outside of ceremonies. Medals didn't bring back the dead. Peter's return to Chicago wasn't the triumphant homecoming he'd imagined. At first, there were parades, handshakes, and thank yous. But as the months went by, the phone calls stopped. The friends who promised to grab drinks never did. And the nightmares, they stayed. The limp kept him from the jobs he qualified for. The nightmares kept him from sleeping. And the VA wait lists stretched for months. Bills piled up. Rent fell behind. One winter night, Peter packed his few possessions into his backpack and walked out of his apartment for the last time. Living on the street strips you down. You learn to eat when you can, sleep when it's safe, and disappear when people look too long. Peter avoided shelters. Too loud, too dangerous. He preferred quiet corners, spots where he could keep his back to the wall. He never held a sign. Pride wouldn't let him. Officer Jake Miller wasn't a bad man, but he wasn't a thoughtful one either. He'd grown up in the suburbs, joined the police academy at 21, and prided himself on being tough but fair. But years on the job had hardened him. He saw the same faces every day, addicts, petty thieves, and people who never seemed to get their lives together. He lumped them all into the same box. Jake was in his early 30s, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and wearing the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you carry a badge. He'd walked this beat hundreds of times, memorizing faces, dismissing most without a second thought. He spotted Peter leaning into a public trash bin. pulling out a crumpled paper bag. Jake slowed his steps, watching. Inside was a sandwich, its bread dry, its lettuce wilted. Peter unwrapped it carefully, like it was something valuable. Jake smirked. "Breakfast of champions, huh?" Peter didn't respond. A young woman walking by paused, her phone in her hand. She tapped the record button. Jake, unaware of the camera, added, "You know there are jobs out there. Maybe try one instead of dumpster diving." Still, Peter said nothing. His posture was calm, his eyes down, but there was something in the way he held himself. Shoulders back, spine straight, that made Jake pause. That's when Jake saw it. A patch on Peter's backpack, tattered, frayed, nearly lost in the grime, but unmistakable. The screaming eagle of the 101st Airborne Division. Jake frowned. "You military?" Peter's voice was low, steady. "Used to be." Jake scoffed. "Yeah, sure." Peter reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, dented tin box. His hands, rough and weathered, handled it with care. He opened it slowly. Inside, folded with precision, was an American flag. Resting on top were 3 medals. The Bronze Star caught the morning light, gleaming faintly. Jake's smirk vanished. The Bronze Star wasn't given for showing up. It was given for acts of heroism in combat, the kind most people couldn't imagine. "Where'd you get those?" Jake asked, his voice quieter now. Peter met his gaze for the first time. "Kandahar, 2009. We were ambushed. 2 men down. I carried them both out under fire. One made it, one didn't. Got this." He tapped the medal, and a leg full of shrapnel for my trouble. The city noise faded into the background. Jake didn't have a comeback. After Jake learned who Peter really was, something in him shifted. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. The image of Peter's eyes, steady, unflinching, but filled with something heavy, stayed with him. The next day, he started asking around. It didn't take long to find Carter, a mechanic on the south side who had served with Peter. Peter Samson, Carter said when Jake called. "That man's a hero. Saved my life. We were in the same convoy when we got ambushed. I was hit bad. He carried me over 200 yards while bullets were flying. Took hits himself, but never stopped. And now you're telling me he's homeless? That ain't on him. That's on us." Jake went back to the corner where Peter sat. This time, no smirk. No sarcasm. "I was wrong," Jake said, crouching so he was eye level. "You deserve better." Peter studied him for a long moment before saying, "Apologies don't build roofs." That night, Jake made calls. He reached out to veteran outreach programs, shelters, and community groups. As Jake was extending a helping hand to Peter, the young woman's video, the one where he mocked Peter, hit the internet hard. It was on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Comments poured in. "This is disgusting. Respect our veterans. That man has more courage than that cop will ever have. Find him. Help him." Veteran outreach programs, local shelters, and community groups, Jake reached out to start a fundraiser. The second video, showing him returning to Peter, helping him to his feet, and telling the world his story, began to spread. Within days, donations topped $50,000. A local business owner offered Peter a job managing inventory. Another offered to furnish his new apartment. On his first night in the apartment, Peter sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the folded flag on the nightstand. The heater hummed softly. For the first time in years, the cold wasn't in his bones. Jake knocked on the door. "Better than a cardboard mattress," Jake said. Peter smiled faintly. "A little." They shook hands. The story made the local news and national headlines. It sparked conversations about veteran homelessness, mental health, and the gap between "thank you for your service" and actual support. Letters arrived for Peter from strangers across the country, some veterans, some just people who wanted to say thank you. Jake kept in touch. He didn't just help Peter once, he checked in. Sometimes they had coffee. Sometimes they just sat in silence. For Jake, the change was permanent. He no longer saw people on the street as a single story. He looked closer. He asked questions. And for Peter, it was proof that even after losing everything, dignity could be restored, not by charity, but by recognition. If you like this story, comment, like, subscribe for more emotional stories, and share to reach more people. Because every face on the street has a history. Every stranger has a story. And sometimes, the man you laugh at is the man who carried freedom on his back.